Hello and welcome back to another episode of Inside the Asperger Studios. Are you somebody who's dealing with an eating disorder such as ARFID? Well, my next guest is a psychologist who deals with just that. So sit back, relax, and grab your favorite beverage, and I'll see you on the other side. See you there.
I wanna believe in the truth, but only see what I'm shown. Got the freedom to choose, but can't decide on my own. Follow what the group is thinking, bottle up my intuition till it's popping.
Hello and welcome back to another episode of Inside the Asperger Studios. Today I'm joined with Dr. Laura. Welcome to the show, Laura.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Not a problem. So why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself?
So, I am a psychologist, a licensed psychologist, independently licensed in New York, Florida, and Virginia. And I also have what's called a PsyPact license, which allows me to provide telehealth in, I believe it's over 40 states now. So I get around, baby. I mean, which is great because that has allowed us to offer services to people who may not get them because they're just in an area of the country where, for example, eating disorder specialists, they just might not be located. And it's a whole population of people who are missing out on the opportunity to get better.
Now, I'm pretty familiar with eating disorders because, I've talked with a lot of people. Do you feel that a lot of the eating disorders come from those who have like a sensory issue dealing with like texture? Could that be a trigger?
Yes. So here's one of the things that's just so fascinating to me. So this fairly like new eating disorder called ARFID, which is avoidant restrictive food intake disorder. It's a nice long word. We call it ARFID, was um uh founded. I don't know if we find these things. It was named in 2013 for inclusion in the DSM-5, I believe it was at that time. And it used to be just some generic like feeding and eating disorder. We knew that there were things going on with kids who just didn't want to eat, didn't seem interested in eating, only restricted their food intake to one or two particular foods. What's come out of this that is just explosive and why it's so important to the neurodivergent population is how common it is in people who are neurodivergent. So in 2017, 2018, I saw my first client with ARFID and in a residential facility. And the idea was, oh, yeah, she's got a little bit of anxiety. We didn't know what to do with her. We had
Right.
no clue. Now, in the place where I work, the eating disorder place I work, we are consistently seeing clients with ARFID with co-occurring autism spectrum disorder, ADHD, anxiety, OCD. So now we're getting a really, really good picture of what this ARFID is and how it commingles with a lot of the other neurodivergent disorders and why it's so complicated to treat then.
No, so you're really saying that it is related, one is related to the other because of the connections between the sensory, between everything else.
Right.
How how could someone who doesn't know what's going on find these triggers or figure out what the triggers are and then say to myself, maybe I need to see somebody.
So this is the bizarre thing. We're getting two types of people who are getting referred for treatment at this point in time. The younger kids, where parents and pediatricians are hopefully a little bit more well versed on eating
Mhm.
disorders, so they're getting that something is going on. And then I'm seeing people in their like 20s, 30s, 40s who were just thought to be picky eaters as
Mm.
kids, because that's what they called them, right? They're just picky
Yeah.
eaters. And now we're coming in and we're seeing the whole compendium of symptoms. And now they're coming in at 20, 30, 40 years old, trying to redo all of those years of poor eating, whether it's related to sensory issues, whether it's related to fears and anxiety about eating, whether it's due to a fear of throwing up from eating a particular food. Because you have to think people who when we didn't know about ARFID, the pediatrician's recommendation was you make them sit at the table and you make them eat. And if they throw up, you still make them eat. So
Right.
people wound up with a lot of negative associations with particular foods.
I mean,
Now, you have a reaction to that. So I'm assuming you've heard some stories.
I've talked with dietitians and things, and yeah, it's very common that kids won't eat something that they don't like the texture to. And the one thing when I talk with the dietitian, he's like, the problem is you can't force them to eat because then they turn away from eating that type of food. You gotta like slowly work it into the foods or blend it into them so they're
Mhm,
getting that nutrition.
mhm,
I actually had a kid on my show a while back who would only eat certain things for the longest time. And
mhm,
then one day I remember he he said he was out with his mother shopping and he's like, I want to try something new. And ever since then he's been trying new foods.
mhm.
And the thing is, you can't force kids to try new things.
No.
Because that will, like you said, lead to an eating disorder because then it's that negative feedback of this food causes this sensation. I don't want this sensation. I want to eat what makes me happy.
Right. And here's the problem with people who have ARFID, though, they do not have the same signal to
Mm.
desire appetite or to desire food the same way that other people who don't have ARFID do. So in spite of knowing that they need to eat a certain amount to maintain your body's basic, energy needs. These are people who cannot even feed themselves that well. And that's why they wind up in the hospital, or that's why they wind up in eating disorder programs.
Mhm.
Because let's say they have gotten down to, and I've seen some women, let's say in their 40s or men in their 40s, the only two foods that they're able to eat with no problems are chicken nuggets and French fries.
It's so
Okay?
funny because I mean, that's what I hear a lot of people, a lot of parents say, oh, my kids will eat chicken nuggets all day long and French fries, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and that's all they'll ever eat. And I'm
Right.
thinking, but where's the nutrition in that?
Well, that's the whole problem. So theoretically, the parents are thrilled because, okay, my kid is eating something, but then they come to us with serious, serious issues with malnutrition,
Mm.
problems with osteoporosis because they can't get any calcium, maybe like problems with diabetes because their diet has been so like lacking in fruits and vegetables and other kinds of things. So there's a lot of nutritional rehab that needs to be done for somebody who doesn't want to eat. And that I have to discriminate this particular eating disorder versus like anorexics and bulimics who they do have an appetite for food. For people who have ARFID, it's I eat because I have to. It's not I eat because I want to.
Mm.
So doing this scheduled kind of eating that we do with these clients, sometimes they really have to do what's called mechanical eating. We're just getting you to get used to the concept of eating. And if at first, you can only eat chicken nuggets and French fries, well, that's not going to last for long because
Mhm.
that's why you're in treatment with us. So one of the goals of treatment always is to increase the variety of foods that people are able to eat for a lot of different reasons. For nutritional reasons, number one, but as a kid, you can get away with eating chicken nuggets and French fries. But as
Yeah.
you get older, and you want to go on a date with someone, or you want to hang out with friends, or you want to go to a business meeting, eating from the children's menu isn't going to fly anymore,
No,
right?
you're right. I mean, because people don't realize, and I've learned this as I've grown with my own tastes and things, your taste buds change as you get older. Your taste change. One minute you can say, I don't like eating this when you were younger, but as you get older, all of a sudden your taste kind of skewer and you start eating things. But from things I've heard, these kids don't change. They can't.
No, they
And
don't.
I think, is it me or is it primarily they're afraid to?
I think it's a couple things. I think it's number one, they probably have some bad associations about changing up food, right?
Mhm.
Because again, pediatricians will say you have to present a particular food to a child 9 times before they will decide whether they like it or not. So you have these poor parents who are trying to create all of these great meals, and the kid doesn't like it, which sets up a negative tone at the dinner table. There are some foods that if a kid actually does try it and has a strong sensory reaction to it, they may gag, they may throw up, and now you have a negative association with eating and with eating this particular food, right? So now we're looking at all of the different reasons why a kid is not going to want to eat. And so think about
Mhm.
just sitting at the table, hey, dinner time, my anxiety would spike. Like, oh my God, I got to go through this again.
Now, when a child comes to you and a parent brings them to you, what are some of the things you deal with? I mean, because I know when any child goes to a doctor or a specialist, I know they're frightened. How do you deal with a child who's one, frightened, two, doesn't know what to expect?
Right. So a lot of the first part of the treatment is really education. So I had a recent client who saw me. He's very educated, like 23-year-old college student, had never heard of ARFID until 3 weeks before he came to us. Right.
Mhm.
So most people do not know that ARFID even exists. And when you tell them they have a diagnosis versus most people who like have cancer and they're devastated at the diagnosis, most people I talk to are like, oh my God, thank God, because now I know I have something that's real. Because for many, many, many years, these people are viewed as being stubborn. You're just stubborn. Just eat it. Everybody else is eating it. Why can't you eat it? Right? So now we have some reasoning and some rationale for why they haven't been able to eat for all of this time. It's a failure to thrive thing, but they're not doing it deliberately. And so that takes off a lot of the burden from the child and the guilt from the parents. Because the pediatricians are like, make them eat, make them eat. How do you make a kid eat
You
who
can't.
doesn't? You just can't,
No,
right?
because if you force them to eat, they're gonna resent it. They're
Right,
gonna pull back, and then that becomes a negative experience.
right.
You want to somehow work it into their diet somehow. You don't want to force them, but you want to like not even coerce. You want to gently work it into their diet somehow.
Right. So usually we work with a team. You know, there's a therapist, there's a dietitian, and then there's a medical doctor because almost all of the time these people have medical consequences from
Mm.
having been malnourished for so long, whether it's cardiac problems, low blood pressure, because a lot of times people don't like to drink either. They may have a sensory issue against drinking water, drinking fluids. So then you have that problem. There may be gastrointestinal issues from not being able to eat, electrolyte problems, as we said, bone density, fatigue, hair loss, just from malnutrition. So you need a doctor to monitor all of their labs to make sure that they're getting what they need, and then a nutritionist to help them develop a plan. Because most of the people who come to us who have ARFID are significantly underweight. So
Under.
right, because they haven't been able to feed
Yeah.
themselves. They do not have the body image issues like people with anorexia or bulimia. They don't really care what they look like, right? It's not like, oh, I'm this thin because I want to be this thin. It's just I hate food. And
Mm.
then a lot of what we do is figuring out a hierarchy of what can we help you get in your system. So we basically look at some of the foods that are the least scary and work our way up the hierarchy. Now, there are people who we see
Hmm.
who it's become like adults who their ARFID has become so generalized, they fear the kitchen.
Oh God.
They fear kitchen appliances because there's so many associations with cooking and having bad food experiences. So you can see like how this can really grow.
It's scary. I mean, especially when I mean, and as a child, it's one thing because you can grow out of it, but when you're an adult and you realize you have this, it's probably 10 times worse.
Mhm. Right. Because people have, listen, there's the social isolation piece. for
Mhm.
kids and adults. Like, I know I eat weird. People ask me all the time why I put weird combinations together or why I only eat this every single day, but that's what my body can tolerate. So there's a lot of nutrition information that we need to give people to teach them how to feed their body appropriately. And then there's the actual doing it. What I happen to love doing with people is every person that I work with who has ARFID, and I'm curious, if you know anybody the same way, they have one sensory superpower.
Mhm.
So it's either taste,
Mhm.
texture, or smell. So what we do you know from people?
I can tell you right off the hand, I got two of the three.
Okay, so
I'm
which one
I'm oversensitive when it comes, well, I got three of the three, taste, smell, and hearing.
mm-hmm.
I um well, no, I don't have taste, but I have really sensitive hearing and real I only have hearing, but I have a friend who's got really sensitive taste. And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, well, I can taste the minerals in bottled water.
Yes, absolutely.
I'm like, are you serious? He's like, yeah, I can taste the minerals in bottled water, so I know which ones taste better than others. I'm like, and then he's like, I can taste the vinegar in
Yeah.
mayonnaise.
And
I'm like,
that's a lot of times why they get so turned off by certain foods. I've had people tell me that they can taste colors.
that's an other issue altogether, I think. I forget what it's called.
I
Synesthesia.
Yes. So they can taste, like, for example, they know when a food has been in the refrigerator, in the freezer. Even if it doesn't have freezer burn on it, they can taste the taste of the freezer.
Wow.
So we're talking like really sensitive. So we have to work around, the strongest sense. So oftentimes what I will do with people is, as we're playing around and trying to figure out which sense is their superpower, I may have them taste a certain food and cover their nose. Right. So
Yeah.
we want to find out, is the smell what's driving it? I may ask them to close their eyes when they eat a food. Is it the visual? Because there are certain foods that if you look at them, they can look pretty
Yeah,
good.
unappealing, yeah.
Right. So what I found with a lot of people is they are super smellers,
Mm.
which is
Hyper
fascinating.
hypersensitive smell is a autism trait.
Yes, absolutely. And these individuals, I joke with them that they would make phenomenal wine and chocolate tasters
Yep.
because those are the qualities that people look for.
I mean,
Um, they're just
I
trying to.
have I have super sensitive smell. I certain smells will totally make me gag. And I have super sensitive hearing. I can hear a cell phone, my mother's cell phone ring in her purse in a loud building.
Mhm,
And I remember back we were at in Lincoln Park Zoo, our zoo here. We were in Farm in the Zoo. Her phone was ringing. It was loud in her purse, and I can hear it ring.
mhm.
And I remember when I was younger, I had okay, what's it called? Tinnitus.
Oh boy.
And I would hear like this humming in my ear in the mornings, and it would drive me nuts. I go to my doctor, and he's like, "You have tinnitus." And I'm like, and he's like, "But you have super hearing. You have the best hearing I've ever talked to about anyone in your age." And that's the strangest thing.
Mhm. Right. It's a superpower, but it can be a struggle. Can be a
Hmm.
struggle too. So what we often do is we're trying to figure out which sense we're trying to work with. And then we're trying to figure out some strategies maybe that we use as kind of a workaround. But basically it's trying to, okay, go on a list of all of these foods.
Hmm.
Sometimes people will tell us these are foods that I would like to like
Hmm.
because I see other people enjoying them and they look like there would be fun foods to eat. So we try them. We try them in a very small, contained environment where they're running the show. They don't have to eat the whole thing, right? They get to just try it. If you like it, you like it. If you don't, that's fine. And what we're finding is through slow exposure, people can expand the variety of foods that they're eating because it's in a safe place where they're in control and where they can say no. And if they don't like it, they don't like it.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. I mean, if you feel safe, you're not where you can try something and know you can put it away, it kind of creates a positive feedback instead of a negative one.
Mm-hmm.
So you're
Exactly.
building basically a positive feedback system for their eating.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And oftentimes just telling people that this behavior is very common for people who are neurodivergent, it hits home for them. They're
Hmm.
like, I always suspected that that might be an issue for me. So if we actually look at the statistics, there was a study done, a combination with, and I'm sure you may know this, but University of Iowa and Penn State, and found that ARFID was highly comorbid with autism spectrum at a
Hmm.
role of 21%, which is super high to have
Wow.
that kind of association. Also, there was a study on individuals with ARFID, and 6.1% of individuals with ARFID also had OCD. So,
Mm.
and another study that showed people with ADHD are more likely to have an eating disorder. So I like to call it the holy trifecta when I see my patients, where I see like the ARFID, the autism, the ADHD and the OCD kind of thing. They all seem to co-occur.
That is just amazing. Have you ever tried with your patients like to give them, there's something called the, have you ever heard of the miracle fruit?
No,
The miracle fruit is like a candy. You can grow it. It's a flower. And basically what it does is it reverses your taste buds.
no.
Yeah, for a certain amount of time. It basically turns anything sour sweet and anything sweet sour. So it would be interesting to see what people do, how people react to that.
Wow. Where do you get this?
You can buy it on Amazon. You can buy it around. You can buy the plant actually. It's a berry, I believe.
So Amazon literally has everything.
Yes,
Mm.
probably.
Yeah. So what we often do also is obviously, if there are other things at play that are affecting the ability to eat. Like let's say you have this ARFID thing, but you're also significantly struggling with ADHD. So
Yeah.
even just the prep of having enough food in the house, even the food that you like to be able to eat quick and easy, we're going to be working on those kinds of issues as well. Or if you have OCD rituals about certain foods, we're going to be working on that stuff too. But it's also making eating very easy.
So I'm guessing you deal differently with those who are neurodivergent to those who are not neurodivergent.
Right. Right. There's a big difference.
Now, how do you deal with those who aren't neurodivergent, who do have ARFID? I mean, what is the procedure to those who are neurodivergent?
I have seen very, very few ARFID clients who do not have some elements of
Hmm.
neurodivergence. They just have not been diagnosed yet.
That's figures. I mean, because a lot of people don't know they're neurodivergent until something else comes up
Happens.
and then they go to see a doctor and they go through testing and they go, oh, those are symptoms of neurodivergency.
Right. So people will come in with ARFID as a diagnosis, and I'll talk to them and I'll have a conversation with them. And I'm like, have you ever been diagnosed with ADHD? And they're like, no, but I'm pretty sure I have it. And they'll talk about other things like difficulties making friends. And it's kind of hard to kind of work into a conversation with someone. Have you ever been diagnosed with autism? That's a challenging one because I
Yeah,
think
that is.
it's a pretty life-changing diagnosis, and I'm not
Mhm.
doing the diagnosis. I'm just asking them if they've had anyone mention. um but I will see some people saying, hey, your social skills, like you seem to struggle with that. Has anyone ever evaluated that part? And sometimes that gets someone in the right direction to get help that they need there. The only people I've seen who are not neurodivergent who have ARFID are people who are having struggles with food and eating due to a traumatic episode related to eating.
Mm.
Whether it's they almost choked on something, and so it led them to develop like a phobia of eating. So they only eat mushy foods. They're
Interesting.
afraid of eating unless their mom is around. I've seen that with a traumatic event. I've also seen it where people have had a stomach flu or food poisoning, and
Hmm.
then it changes their views of food. Those are the non-neurodivergent cases that I've seen.
Now, would you say those who have ARFID and are neurodivergent would also wind up with like GI issues as well?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Listen, think about it this way. That I don't know, and you may know this research better than I do, so I'd love to hear about this from you. If there are any specific GI issues that tend to occur with people who are on the autism spectrum. I believe there are,
There
but
are, yeah.
don't quote me.
Yeah, there are. I've talked with people about that, and I've had people on my show. And yeah, more likely there those who are neurodivergent are more likely to have GI issues. And I'm my mind, I'm thinking that the issues come from probably from sensory issues. Probably because food related neuro malnutrition because they're sensory due to eating. They don't know they have ARFID, and it's a whole ball game of like how do you balance this with this?
Right, right. And even just thinking of if all you can eat is chicken nuggets and French fries, you're going to be constipated up the wazoo.
Oh yeah.
So that's going to cause you a lot of distress. And maybe the system isn't even functioning properly because we do see that once people start eating a full and varied diet, their digestive issues get worse for a bit because the body is like, I've never seen this food before. I didn't even know this was possible.
Now, how would you suggest somebody approach someone they know if they feel they have an eating disorder, especially ARFID?
I always like to point out behavior. I think people take behavior much less personally than if you're talking about, hey, I think you have an eating disorder. I like focusing on, hey, I noticed that, you seem to be really picky around your food. Or when we talk about going out to a restaurant, you seem to really be nervous about going, like what kind of food is going to be there? What am I going to be able to eat? Can't we just stay home? I'm wondering if you've ever thought that maybe there's something going on with that.
Now, when you're dealing with somebody who is neurodivergent, who has ARFID, what are some of the common signs they should look for before they even come to you to know that they have it?
I think by the time they get to me, they've had it for a long time.
Okay.
So, depending on when someone gets to me, but it's usually texture issues related to food, how the food smells, the appearance, anxiety experiences around certain foods, due
Mm-hmm.
to fears of throwing up if I even see that food, or any feelings, negative feelings that they have around food. Definitely lack of appetite or lack of interest in food. Um, they may chew and chew and chew and chew in their food, but never really want to swallow it.
Oh, wow.
Because the swallowing process, it's just a weird texture. They may vomit or gag. But the question I 100% ask all the time, and if I get into contact with the parent, how was the child fed? And 99.9% of the time, usually the mother will say to me, I noticed when I was breastfeeding my kid didn't seem to ever want to eat. So the doctor told us try to switch to solid foods. And the only food that my kid would eat was peaches. They would reject the breast, they would reject the bottle. So when I go back in time and I ask these questions, this
Mm-hmm.
is not just something that all of a sudden happened when a kid turned 3. There's usually a lot of signs going on when there's breast or bottle feeding even going on.
That's very interesting. That breastfeeding can lead up to somebody having ARFID or some kind of sensory issue to food.
Well, it's not that it caused it, it's just that we can see the symptoms of it, so that sort of indicates more of a neurological thing,
Mhm.
especially if it goes along with autism, right? That maybe we're born with
Sensory
just
issues.
different ways of approaching.
Yeah, I mean, the sensory issues are so huge, especially, I mean, a lot of people I've talked to have texture issues. They won't touch this, they won't touch that. They don't like the texture of this fruit. They don't like the texture of that. They don't like the way this smells. They don't like the way that smells. And what I'm sensing is because of that, they're cutting out the nutritions of their life in their life because these foods are what they need to give them that nutrition.
Right. Right. And they avoid those foods. And the avoidance gets bigger and bigger, where even they avoid going to the grocery store because they can't handle the sensory stimulation of looking at all of the different foods. I mean, if you go to a grocery store and you're looking at milk and you have sensory issues, I mean, do you see how many different brands and kinds of milk there are?
Yes, I mean, I know I found out late in life that I am kind of lactose intolerant.
Mhm,
So I can't drink regular milk anymore. I have to drink lactose-free milk.
mhm. So that
And
at least narrows it down for you.
yeah, it really narrows it down.
Mhm,
I tried um soy milk, I've tried coconut milk, oat milk, and I didn't realize coconut milk was high in fat.
yes,
I have a dietitian, she's like, you know, coconut milk is high in fat. Maybe you should just try regular milk that is lactose free.
lactose free, right. Mhm.
And I bet you, like we were saying, a lot of these kids don't realize, yeah, you have sensory issues, but the foods you're avoiding are the foods you need.
Mhm. Mhm.
I mean, the question is, how do you build that into their diet? How do
Well,
you
that's the whole thing of
inculcate?
working with a team, right?
Yeah.
A team of specialists, because not too many people know how to treat this. They'll just put the food on the table and say, just eat it. Here's the other thing that I think is really important to point out too, is that this is a matter of degree. Like
Mhm.
people who are not neurodivergent may have texture issues surrounding food
Hmm.
or may have food preferences. I know my brother, who's definitely not, does not have ARFID, doesn't like peas. He says peas taste fuzzy to him. Okay. But that's the only food that he doesn't really like. Right. So I, it's curious to me. I don't know if anyone's ever done any research on this, to what extent people who are not neurodivergent, how normal is it in our population just for some of us to have foods that we just don't like? I don't like pudding. I don't like the texture of pudding. There's just something about it.
Hmm.
I can have ice cream. I can have yogurt. I can have all different kinds of things. I just don't like pudding. Right. But
I
I'm
mean,
not
yeah, I
going to
mean, that's
die.
so true. But
I'm
yeah,
not going to die from avoiding pudding.
no,
That's really where the issue
yeah.
is when you have someone who has ARFID, they are quite likely might need to be tube fed at a certain point in time if we can't get them to eat enough.
Now, what are some of the signs? If somebody's unaware that they have ARFID, what should they look for besides? I mean, you just can't say avoiding foods is a sign, because if they're autistic, they can just go, "Oh, that's just a sensory issue. I'm avoiding it because of a sensory issue." But what are some of these signs that they should look at themselves and say, "Oh, this is more than just a sensory issue to me"?
I think it's the degree of upset that they experience about eating or trying a certain food, right? If there's
Mhm.
a food preference or a fear of food. Okay, so let's say I don't like pudding, right?
Yeah.
But if someone says to me, you got to try this pudding, it's the best pudding I've ever had, I will try it. I'm not going to be worried about trying it. I may like it, I may not. But for people who are so stuck in the ARFID, the fear of trying the food, the sensory issue is overwhelming. I have had clients who have shut down crying. Do
Oh,
not
wow.
show me this food. I can't even look at it. So we're looking at a matter of degree. You also need to look at how underweight are you for your age and for your height, right? How malnourished are you? So we're looking from a medical danger perspective too. There's the behavior piece, which is how freaked out do you get? Like I have a patient who cannot be in the same room as someone who is eating a particular food because she can smell it from all the way over there.
Wow.
Right? So
Mhm.
it's really the extent to which it interferes with your life, the degree of symptoms, how malnourished you are, and can you actually live a normal life? If you can't hold a job or you're having trouble having a social life or going to a party or dating because you can't eat, or you don't have the energy even to eat because your diet is so restricted, then you have some problems.
Now, have you had success? I curing would be too much of a word, hard of a word, but healing those who have Alfred to the fact where they can get back to eating the things they once liked.
Yes, there's a lot of success in this field, and insurance is actually starting to pay for it, which I absolutely love, recognizing that it is an actual disorder with medical consequences, but being able to make people comfortable with the concept of food in general, recognizing that at first you may not have an appetite, your body doesn't know how to have an appetite
Mhm.
because it's never had that before,
Mhm.
and being able to slowly but surely integrate foods that are low on the fear list, right? So someone may say, I've never had corn. I don't know if I'm going to like it or not, but I'd be willing to try it. Bingo. We're going to go there first, right? Because there's a willingness, which means there's no negative association with that food. So it's slow and it's methodical. But what I've seen is these exposures build on each other. Sometimes we find out with people, well, I don't like this brand of yogurt, but I'll eat this brand of yogurt.
Mhm.
Sometimes that's even an easier exposure. Let's just get three different brands of yogurt and let's see which one you like. Um, and the idea is to also, if someone likes yogurt, we want to expand it, expand the flavors, try a new flavor, try a different brand, just in
Mhm.
case you go to a 7-Eleven somewhere and you're looking for something to eat and they don't have your brand. And we have, in the place that I work, there's a really, to my knowledge, every client who I have had there, and I've had probably at least 15 to 20 clients with ARFID over the past 2 years
Wow.
that I've been at this place. And they've all had success experiences in that we've been able to have them gain weight. They're closer to what would be an ideal body weight for them based on height and, growth charts and things like that. And they have been able to expand the amount of food that they were able to eat, that they are now safe. They know that they can go to any restaurant and get a meal and not feel embarrassed.
Now, how long do you work with a patient before you can call it a success to where they're able to walk into a restaurant without being fearful of food, of texture, of everything else?
I mean, it's so individual. I would say the average time that we work with a client is probably about 6 months, which, given how long they might have had a disorder, is not really a big deal. And it's not the place that I work at is called Within Health, and it's not a residential facility. It's a
Mhm.
PHPIOP. So people are actually able to have a real life as
Mhm.
they're going through the treatment and the programming. And even it's learning how, okay, if you're going to have a hard time with meals, let's find you protein bars that you like. Let's find all, or shakes. Let's find all different ways to get calories in and all of the nutrients in that you need to survive.
It's good to know. I mean, when you when a parent brings a child in, do they know right away that your child has an eating order, or do they find out when working with you and your team?
It depends how well versed the parents are. Usually, if they come to our program, someone has told them that probably an eating disorder going on, and that's why they're looking for
Mhm.
us. Um, I have a new patient who is coming to me who is an adult, and we're not sure if he has ARFID or not. There's some consequence related to going through a medical procedure. So perhaps it's a phobia of eating based on the medical procedure. So I'll be interested to see, what happens with that. But for most people, if they're coming to our program, which is known as an eating disorder program, they think that there's something going on.
Now, I understand you have a podcast.
I do. I do. I love podcasting.
So first of all, what made you decide to start one?
So I started a podcast with a colleague of mine a couple of years ago, and we did it as a way to combat burnout. We were looking for different ways to talk about mental health issues. And we would have great conversations behind the scenes. And we were like, these would be great conversations for other people to hear just about what mental health really is. And then she decided to move in a different direction. So I decided to develop my own. And so my podcast is called From Mayhem to Mindset. And it's really about the power of using your mind and
Hmm.
being able to transcend out of chaos and mayhem, which is part of a lyric that I took out of an Eminem song, because I happen to just love him. And really going from mayhem to using your mindset to creating the kind of life that you want, which is what therapy is really all about, right? Mark Panther. You're trying to get from one place to another, and you're trying to use the power of your mind, your resilience, whatever strengths you have.
That's so funny that you mentioned that because I've always had this quote in my head and I've used it off and on that is chaos, was it from chaos comes brilliance from chaos comes brilliance,
Yeah,
which means from a chaotic mind, like those of us who are autistic, beautiful and brilliant things come from it.
absolutely.
I mean, you look at some of the things we are capable of doing in life. And the problem with the world is they don't look at autism. They don't know how to treat it. They don't
Mhm.
know how to deal with us. But there really isn't a problem. We're just different thinkers. We think differently. We think outside the box.
Which isn't that what oftentimes business leaders are telling people to do when they're in brainstorming sessions? They're like, guys, stop coming up with the same crap. I need someone to think outside the box. That's how the best solutions to problems that we have in society have come about for people who I don't know specifically if they are on the spectrum or not, but we know that Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, whatever politically you think of all of these people, they have come up with solutions to problems.
Mhm. I mean, I would fit perfectly in your podcast for one specific reason. I did something most people who are neurodivergent probably wouldn't do because they're all mostly introverted. I literally stepped outside of my comforts to go to school in Europe.
Wow.
Then I traveled for 6 weeks through Europe on my own. And then I wrote a book, and it's all about how you need to look at your experiences as an experience, no matter if it's good or bad, and take it as it is, because if you stay in your bubble, the world's gonna keep moving.
Yeah.
And if your parents are not those who can teach you the life skills you need, the social skills you need, the world will keep moving and you won't know how to do things like balance the checkbook, talk to your doctors, make
That's right.
appointments. Because I've known people who are afraid to even pick up the phone to call their doctor. My good friend who's autistic, he's like, I'm waiting for my doctor to call me about my medicine. I'm like, you don't wait. You gotta call them and be on top of them. They're
Hmm.
busy.
Hmm.
You could go days without or weeks without them calling you back because they
Right.
forget. You need
Hmm.
to be on top of the doctors to
That's
call.
so right. That's so right.
And people need, even those who are neurodivergent need to step out of their comfort zones. And the problem is, and I'm sure you'll agree, we live in such a negative society. Everything builds a wall in front of yourself. Every little negative effect
Hmm.
builds this wall, and people are afraid to take it down because they're afraid to get hurt again.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I would love to have you on my podcast because we can continue this conversation in a very, very different way.
All right. And what kind of recognition has your own podcast got you?
Recognition? Um, it's interesting. I mean, I hope that it is something that monetizes and that turns from an expensive hobby into something that is more that reaches more people. But we're having conversations, and I have people now who are asking to be on the podcast, which is like a thrill for me to be like,
Hmm.
okay, people are listening and people are having the conversations and people want to talk about the hard conversations. For me personally, it's turned into a mission where I know that everybody has a story to tell, and everyone's story can influence somebody else to do something a little bit different to save their life and maybe save the life of somebody else. And if we've done that, our job is done.
All right. Now, what advice do you have for those who are finding out that, oh, I may have ARFID? What can I do?
Just get help. It is so treatable. And you will be around people who have the same thing. When you sit three people with ARFID down in one of our groups and you find out, holy cow, every single one of them hates tomatoes and tomato sauce. And they thought they were the only one. They're like, wow, I'm not so weird.
It's
Right?
just right. It's just like autism. It's when one person finds out they're autistic, they feel alone. But when they sit down and they talk with others in the community or online and they realize, oh my God, I'm not alone, then doesn't become a fight that you're fighting alone. It becomes let's work together, let's build and learn from each other.
And that's part of doing the whole podcast is let's learn from each other. I don't have all the answers for sure. I just like to ask the questions
Mhm.
because asking the questions is how you get an answer from someone that really might resonate with you and change it around.
And finally, where can people find out more about you online?
Sure. So I have a pretty large presence on social media. So they can go to all of my podcasts, by the way, all of the videos, everything that I've ever done is on my YouTube, which is Laura Ellick. That's got everything on there. I don't even know how many videos is on there, but I'm also on TikTok, Laura Ellick Reel, Instagram, Laura Ellick Reel. I'm on all the socials. You can find me. But if you're looking for more information about the work that I do, you can go to my website, which is www.lauraellick.com, and just shoot me an email, shoot me a text, and let me know what you're thinking. If you need help, you need someone who needs help, you need me to speak at an event, I'm happy to do it.
And that's it, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Reed Miles, and that was Dr. Laura Alec, and I'll see you in the next one. Thank you, Laura.
Thank you.
And I